Hello and welcome back to Crafty Simulations and welcome to the latest episode. In today's episode, I have decided to bring back some rotary aviation. So, we are bringing back the helicopters to the simulators and helicopters to this channel. It's been a while since I've flown a helicopter in this channel. I don't feature too much on the old rotary aviation, and that's probably because I don't really know. They're interesting to fly, they're a nice little challenge. I come from the era of the likes of Microsoft Flight Simulator FSX, P3D, FS 2004, I think was one, FS9 I think it was. And I can always remember helicopters being the bane of my existence back then. And that was basically because, even though it looked like a helicopter, and it sounded like a helicopter, and it had a helicopter's cockpit, to the flight simulator, it was an aircraft. And I'm saying this because, just like the aircraft we have in the simulators today, in 2020 and 2024, they have config files. And in FSX, and earlier sims, the config file was tweaked to allow this vehicle to act like a helicopter. But it was still an aircraft. You couldn't, for instance, fly backwards. It would be very difficult. The helicopter would waggle and most likely crash. But today, in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024, rotary aviation is a lot different. And there's some very, very good representations of helicopters from different companies. Now, what you see before you is the Cownansim Bell 206B3. And there is two versions of the Jet Ranger by Cownansim, B3 and L3, I think it is. I'll feature the other one in a future video. I think I featured this particular helicopter in a very early video on this channel, but I haven't featured it ever since, and I haven't really flown it since. And it wasn't till, well, a few days ago when I decided to fly it again. I thought, you know something, these are actually pretty darn good. So here we are back in with the helicopters. So I thought I would take a little flight in one of my favouriteest little helicopters here. I mean, I suppose my favourite helicopter would be the R66. Again, Cownansim. Cownansim do make some absolutely cracking helicopters. But this Jet Ranger is certainly very, very good. And we are at my favourite airfield, which is Burning Blue Designs Wickenby. It's my home of general aviation. Ignore the fact that my helicopter is decked up in army camouflage colours. So I am going to give it a whirl and try to fly this. So it's been a while. I've still got to remember how to start the thing up and how to fly it. Oh, the joys. I can just think about it now. If you have ever had any troubles flying helicopters, you'll probably understand what I'm about to do, and it's a bit difficult. Flying a helicopter is sort of like witchcraft. It just doesn't make sense. It is all about balancing. You're balancing the controls to get the desired effect of what you want to do. In an aircraft, it flies forward. Got the engine on, it will go forward. In a helicopter, you've got a 3D movement to deal with and controls that are not helicopter controls. So, when I come back, I'm going to get my controls all hooked up, so I just realised I've forgotten a few things, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to give this whirly bird even, a bit of a fly around. What could possibly go wrong? So, welcome to the cockpit of the Jet Ranger. Let's just check everything's working. Trackir is working. Whee! I don't believe the problems I've been having with Trackir recently. Oh, hey! Right, so let's see if we can still remember how to start this thing up. So, turn Trackir off for the time being because I don't need it. Right, so battery on, generator on. Cancel that annoying thing. Right, anti-collision lights are coming on. Avionics and camera after engine. Fuses are checked all in. Yes, we do have fuses in this helicopter. Running through everything. It's been such a long time since I have manoeuvred a helicopter. Right, so we've got that set, like I said, that all works. Right, let's see if this thing actually wants to start up. Engine starting. Engine firing, rotor spinning. One thing I've always said about Cownansim, their sound effects are absolutely brilliant. Start feeding in some throttle. And we have a live engine. Right, so now we shall have avionics. Pitot heat's not required. Squawking 7,000. We'll just let the Garmin units power up. Not that we'll be needing them. So, as I was saying earlier on in the video, flight simulators and helicopters, it's a hard thing to crack. In previous simulators, they didn't quite get it 100%, or even close. In Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, things were a little bit better. But it is still a balancing act between all the controls. So just getting hold of our satellites, and they're just coming through now, so we'll be good to go. Like I said, we're not using the GNS 530s. We'll be staying in the local area. So we have a general aviation airfield here, Burning Blue Designs. My home for general aviation in simulation. So runway is out ahead of us. We're going to move over to the grass over to our right. We've got nothing around us. Got a building to our left, that's fine. Right, so we're setting at full throttle and start bringing in some cyclic. This is the thing about helicopters, you end up bouncing around all over the place. This is probably one of those videos where I will not be talking that much, and that's probably because I'm trying to concentrate. So we are going to fly a typical routine that I like to fly when it comes to helicopters, and having not flown them for a while. So we're going to try a little bit of hover practice. Out over the runway, airspace is clear. Just trying to balance the controls to get the desired effect. Also, another tip for helicopters: Always look out the cockpit, obviously keep an eye on the controls obviously, but try and pick a point that is quite far away from the helicopter as your fixation point, as I like to call it, and then you'll stay relatively close to where you need to be. So now we've got the hover, let's see what she's like in the transferring to forward flight. So nose comes down, airspeed's building up. Nose goes back, and now we get some altitude. But it is a constant sitting on the anti-torque pedals. They're not rudder pedals, they're anti-torque pedals for a helicopter. Constant stick movement. Bit of re-trimming out. There we go. Now the term stick and rudder flying usually is for general aviation flying and basic form of flight. But in helicopters, stick and rudder really does come into it, or stick and anti-torque pedal, because even in a turn, you have to use the anti-torque pedals to control your turn. If you're wondering what that tone is, we've got a radar altitude which I have not bothered to reset, so I think it's set for 200 feet. So what I like to do on these little flights is to basically fly around the airfield, and I'm going to bring myself back in on the runway heading and try and bring myself into a hover over the runway. Or that's the plan. So, over the runway. Not a bad position to end up at. So let's go again. Now obviously one of the sticking points as to why helicopters don't quite work in flight simulation is the controls. Obviously we have different sets of controls here in helicopters, and in flight simulators it's a little bit different because obviously everyone thinks a joystick and a throttle is what you need for flight sim. Now obviously I'm using a Honeycomb Bravo throttle quadrant with a helicopter profile which I created, and I'm using my Warthog Thrustmaster stick, and obviously I've got Virpil anti-torque pedals or rudder pedals. Now, back in the day of FSX and FS 2004, there wasn't really helicopter controls. Now, there are companies that will make flight simulator helicopter controls, proper helicopter controls, and they're usually themed after specific helicopters. Obviously, they are incredibly expensive. Not something I've looked into. I mean, I don't do as much rotary aviation as I really should do, but certainly not for me to. I would love to try some helicopter controls for sure, just to see how much realism they add. But unfortunately, it always boils down to the cost. So once again, we're going to be moving out into the runway. Good visibility. Onto runway heading. Helicopter coming down, nose going up. This one we're a bit higher, but we're still over the runway. You're never quite relaxed in a helicopter, you're just never relaxing. Unlike an aircraft, you are just never relaxing. But when you have a good flight in a helicopter, you know it. And once you start getting a feel for the helicopter, you can start having a little bit of fun with it. Cownansim really do know how to create awesome helicopters. So let's bring her in for a landing. So we're going to land in front of the tower. So always pick your landing point well in advance. So I'm slightly crabbing in here. I'm doing this on purpose so I can keep a good visual of what's in front of me. Swing around. And there we go, simple. Well, I say simple. Fairly good landing, they seem to be fairly impressed. We don't want to give them a dust off, so we will be shutting down fairly quickly. Fuel systems are now shut off. So, anti-collision lights are coming off. Avionics are coming off. I'll leave the other two on. So there we go. The Cownansim Jet Ranger, the B3 version, is a very, very, very good helicopter. We might feature the L3. I think there is a slight difference. I've got to stop Trackir for a minute. But yeah, I will feature the L3. I want to start featuring a few other Cownansim helicopters because they do make some very good helicopters. Also, I should say, including Airwolf. That's right. The Boeing, sorry, not Boeing, Bell 222, civilianised version, obviously, is featured in the sim. And just turn off everything, so generator off, batteries off. So yes, the famous Airwolf is available and on this sim, and I usually find Airwolf to be a bit of a swine to fly at the best of times, but I will get some practice in and it will be featured in a future video. So if you have any questions or comments about rotary aviation, about the Jet Ranger of which you have just seen, or about the amazing scenery that we have here from Burning Blue Designs, why not drop a comment down below and I will get on to answering that. I will put a description, a link to the helicopter and the scenery if you're interested, also in the description. And like I say, if you've got any questions or comments, bang them below, and I will see you in a future Microsoft Flight Simulator video very, very soon.